Symbols that reflect a history of oppression are not uncommon at the University of Texas at Austin. Robert Lee Moore Hall is named after a mathematician who refused to teach black students. Painter Hall is named after a former UT president who opposed the admission of an African-American law student in the landmark civil rights case Sweat v. Painter. And the former home of George Littlefield, a Confederate Army officer who became a university regent, resides on campus directly across from the Home for Black and Latino Studies, the Gordon White Building. But in recent years, the university's administration has taken strides to acknowledge its own troublesome history, and students are taking notice.
I think history is important, but also being cognizant of the people on campus and understanding what these things mean for different people is important as well.
In 2012, the Board of Regents voted to change Simpkins Hall, which owed its name to a UT law professor and leader of the Florida Ku Klux Klan, to Creekside Residence Hall. An inscription commemorating the Confederacy which once adorned the western wall of Littlefield Fountain was scrubbed away in 2016. And 3 Confederate statues were removed from the South Lawn in August of 2017. UT was even sued by the Sons of Confederate Veterans, but it proved unsuccessful.
Some people feel like, this is our history, this is Texas tradition, which I do understand, but I do think that it's important to recognize the history of the school, but you have to be realistic about that history. I think that monuments, buildings, there's a place for them, but maybe not on campus, a museum perhaps.
Most recently, school spirit song The Eyes of Texas has stirred controversy because of its troublesome origins. Written in 1903 by UT band member John Sinclair, the song's lyrics reference a saying by the current UT president, Colonel Prather, who would often close his public addresses with the phrase, "The eyes of Texas are upon you." However, the song debuted at the Varsity Minstrel Show, where the performers dressed in blackface as slaves as they chanted. Under these circumstances, lines like, "The eyes of Texas are upon you, you cannot get away," take on a different meaning. Some students have long been uncomfortable with the song when it's performed.
Typically I leave, I'm not gonna lie. Especially when they play it at parties and things like that.
It just doesn't have a pretty history, and it's similar to the monuments on campus. The history is important, but it's also if I could put that song in a museum and just leave it in the museum and not have to hear it anymore, I would do that.
This is the Barbara Jordan statue, erected on campus in 2009. The first African-American elected to state senate, she seems to stand watch over the university's checkered past and its promising future.
One of the things that we could change is diversifying our campus as a whole by, as African Americans, we can start integrating ourselves and immersing ourselves into facets of UT society that wouldn't normally be occupied by African Americans. Because one, that's saying to the other people hey, that's a perspective I didn't know before. Hey, that's a person I didn't know before, and all they have to cling on to right now is stereotypes because they don't know us. And I feel if they got to know us, we could be breaking down barriers, not breaking down statues.